Hey everyone, Mike Edwards here. I'm here with Leanne French. Hey Leanne, and welcome
Hello.
to Empowered Until Further Notice. I created this video cast out of the idea that we take ideas and we judge them, right? We rate them, we rank them, we judge them before they even get a chance to get out in the world. And so, what if instead of judging them and putting them aside, we just empowered them and saw what happened? Until further notice, which means if they're not working, great, no problem, throw them away, do it again, do something different, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, Leanne, welcome. I'm very excited to have you here. I think we have a topic that we're both really passionate about.
We do. We do.
Yeah. So, but let's start with why don't you introduce yourself? Tell people, who are you?
Okay. Sounds good. First of all, Mike, thank you. Thank you for the invitation and sharing some time with us. And thank you for creating this and putting this good work out into the world. I hold the practice of prototyping, and empower until further notice is a
Yes.
form of prototyping. Love it. So, who am I? I've been doing this for a while as a leadership and a life coach. And, here are some of the facts. Along with coaching, I'm a part of the faculty of CTI, which is the Coactive Training Institute. So I actually teach people from all around the world how to coach.
Mm-hmm.
And here's my deal. I believe we're all leaders,
Mm-hmm.
right? In some form, we lead our lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, for me, it's like in every realm, working with executives and leaders, it's like, where do you need to step into leadership? And I
Yes.
actually call it lifeship because I'm like, well, you know what? Yeah, you have your life and you're a leader. Let's put them together and it's lifeship. Because let's face it, what's causing you some funk at home is probably causing something at work. And what's causing you funk at work is probably causing
Yeah.
something for you at home. So
Yeah.
when we just build it all together, lifeship. That's
Yeah.
the realm in which I work. And I think this is really poignant right now, considering we're all working from home and
Mm-hmm.
those boundaries between work and home life
Mm-hmm.
kind of grayed out or
Isn't that the
probably
truth?
mostly gone. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So,
I love that lightship. And
lifeship.
what I really love about it is, people tend to think leaders are people with some kind of title or education or natural ability, but it is in every one of us, and it's just you're willing to do something about what's going on around you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
That's exactly how I hold it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I love
very
that.
cool. Yeah.
Cool. So the topic we're here to talk about today is feedback, or more specifically, diametric feedback. And we'll
Yeah.
get into what that means. But I just want to read a little bit of what Leanne sent me, just to kind of get us into here, in terms of what is this topic about. And here's what she said when I asked her, what do you want to talk about? The thing that I'm fascinated by these days is the lack of diametric feedback. Directly opposing feedback. We set up our worlds to confirm our beliefs, our ways, our opinions, and what it would be like to create some what would it be like to create some feedback loops that challenge those beliefs and challenge our perspectives. And I got a little excited because I spent a lot of time in the agile community, right, working at various levels, and
Yeah.
feedback really is the whole point of this agile thing for those who know it. How do we get feedback quickly,
Yeah.
and also to use your term, diametric feedback?
Yeah. 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 Well, I think it's clear in terms of, let's just talk about what is feedback,
Love that.
right? Yeah. And when we think about feedback is any information that we receive about ourselves. So we have
Mm,
formal feedback, right? This can come in the way of performance reviews, likes on our social media. And
Yes.
then we have informal feedback, right? You're talking to somebody and they're like, yeah, okay. Yeah,
Mhm.
the nodding of the head, the body language, or maybe the big sigh as you broach that subject once again that nobody wants to talk about. This is all feedback. And, I hold the position we're in a constant feedback loop and we can create those feedback loops.
I would
Right?
agree. I
Yeah.
would actually take it one step further. I love what you're saying. Just to add to it, is
Mhm.
there's systemic feedback too,
Yes.
right? And I'm going to use the example of I just got back from 2 weeks of vacation. We're up north. We're on a lake where we did a lot of fishing, and like the end of the fishing pole going, right? That's feedback. We're
Absolutely.
or the lack of there's
Yeah.
no
Or the
fish
lack
here.
of. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so when that happens, if I happen to have a lure on, it's like, well, let's do something different.
Yeah.
But if I ignore that feedback, I'm going to be bored for hours.
Yeah. 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 And probably questioning, right? Like,
Yes,
either why do I continue doing this
yes,
or what's happening,
yes,
right? Both
yeah,
are true.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
to bring it back to the personal side, I also am thinking, how often do we receive feedback and we look at it as, well, somebody's attacking me or it's criticism,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
opposed to it's information.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if it comes harsh, it's just information.
It's all information. You're so right. Like, and so what I notice is so much of in my work, I spend so much time in this feedback conversation. It is a big, diverse, juicy topic, and I love it. Feedback's my jam. But like, so, right, we talk about one of the questions is how do we give feedback?
Hmm.
How do we give it? And then
Hmm.
another conversation is like, how do we take it? How do we
Hmm.
receive it? How do we
Hmm.
mine it for nuggets? And just
Yes.
as you were saying, I love to just take it one, like stretch it out a little more and being like, okay, well, how can we create feedback that actually informs us and gets us all creative and perhaps, changing how we approach certain topics, situations,
Yes.
problems, life in general. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree. And it's not just feedback back that informs us, it's feedback that doesn't confirm what we already believe. It might,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But we get
Yeah.
past that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and this is where when I sent you that note, that's what I'm just fascinated about like how much in our world have we in our world. Doesn't that sound just big and heavy
I
and
know.
oh, you know, sorry for using the royal we, but
Yeah.
like when we think about we create our spaces
Yes.
and we're always searching for this place of
Yes.
and i'm I get pretty comfortable when I'm completely confirmed and affirmed that I'm on the right path. That
Hmm.
feels pretty good, right? So i
Yeah.
want to i want to make a distinction here between comfort and safety. This is my hand talking happening here, is like,
I love that.
yeah, yeah. Here, let me see if I can decipher things for you. So I think like comfort is the big old lazy boy at the end of the day, where you're sitting back and you got your cold beer and your remote control. That's
Yes.
comfort,
Yes.
right? Whereas safety is the space of your parachute's packed,
Yes.
and that the chances of severe injury has been mitigated.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
in some way. And when leaders are spending so much time in the comfort zone or in
Yes.
the confirming zone, the creativity juices that can happen of being, you know, possibly out there edge walking,
Hmm.
um, aren't available,
Hmm.
right? You get a little
Hmm.
stagnant in the lane of comfort.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how does what does that have to do? And I could make this up, but I want to hear your opinion,
Yeah.
or I could share my opinion. But um, what does that have to do with diametric feedback?
Yeah, yeah. Well, for me, it's like if I'm in that comfort zone and I'm seeing everything of like, oh yeah, okay, I'm doing, that's affirming that I'm in the right lane, or
Mhm.
everything that is coming in maybe feels a little too good, and I'm feeling like, oh yeah, I've got this going. Um, I'm I, probably not paying attention to other possibilities.
Mhm.
So, when we're in one perspective and we're continuing down that lane, when we add an opposing perspective in between these two perspectives, see this gap in between here? There's
Mhm.
possibility and creativity in that
Mhm.
space. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and unless you push from one side of that to the other, I have no idea if my hands are doing the same as yours on this video world, right? But to me, unless you push through that zone,
Yeah.
right, and be willing to look at it from that other perspective, like you're just going to stay in your comfort zone doing what you're doing, and you're going to be successful, right?
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
that's what happens in
Yeah.
comfort.
Yeah.
But growth and creativity and whatever thing you want to insert here has to come
Mhm.
from the other side of that.
Right. Right. It's that tension between the two, the opposing,
Yes.
that can that initiates creativity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on how do you get there?
How do you get there? Well, yeah, that's always the good question, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think about, and let me be clear, Mike, when you say how do you get there, what is it that you're looking for me to speak to?
Well, to the point where you're so comfortable being in the comfort zone, right? You're going
Hmm.
along and things are working. When I work with corporate clients,
Hmm.
um, often people perceive that I'm brought in because things are not working and it's falling apart and it's whatever. But it's like, wait a minute, you're already a, whatever, $100 million
Hmm.
company, I'm just picking a
Yeah.
number, right? You got here somehow. So it was working. But to get to where you want to be, you're going to have to really push through and look at something differently,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So how do you push through that? How do you, like, what are the things you have to deal with that you can really accept and look at diametric feedback?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I want at this point, I want to be really clear that this is not about going out and being in like confronting conversations and opposing, like sharing your opposing view everywhere. You always have the right to calibrate to
Yeah,
safety.
that's a
Just to
different
be clear.
problem if you
Yeah,
do that.
that's something else, right? Right. But this is more about like expanding your range to be with, and
Yes.
expanding your range to be with, and I'll pull these out even a little more. And another one is like expanding your curiosity. So,
Hmm.
you know, one, pay attention to the feedback loops that you have created,
Yes.
right? Yeah, particularly around, where do we go to get our information? And I'm just going to keep doubling down on social media, because social media is set up every time we hit a like button, every time we go to shopping, it is
Yes.
set up in an algorithm. Oh, you know what? Leanne's looking at hats. Let us start showing her all these
Yes.
hats, right?
Yes.
And like, oh, you really like this post on Instagram. Let's feed you some more. Let's confirm everything that you're looking at, and help you kind of manifest your world around that way. So
Yes.
part of it is like just knowing your feedback loops, knowing when you so also like being in that curious zone of like, that seems different than what I thought about before. And sometimes we just like, here's my hand talking
Yes.
again, like, I'm not seeing it, it's not happening, I'm just going to keep going. Whereas
Yes.
um, this is very much of like stepping towards and being curious,
Yes.
right? So, and there is this balance to it as well, Mike, of like, when I think about mountain biking, when I'm out riding with my shred sisters, you know, the one rule is like, look where you want to go.
Yes.
Absolutely. And you also need to know what's happening on, around you, right?
Yes.
So you keep your eye, you're changing your focus so that you know what's there. Doesn't
Hmm.
mean you're changing your track, but
Hmm.
you know what's around you. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I too do mountain biking, often with my son. It probably a different level of mountain biking, given you're in Canmore, Alberta, versus Ontario. But there are some really challenging trails there, and I
Yeah.
think what I'm hearing is, great, I landed that jumper, that whatever, right behind me. That's not the important thing right now. It's what's in front of me.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. You reminded me just last week, I fell off my bike.
Oh, I've done
I
that a
took
few times.
I crashed. I crashed. It was a big
Uh-huh.
crash. There was
Uh-huh.
some owies. There was a little bit of blood and lots of
Uh-huh.
dirt. And I was kind of laughing because, of course, I wanted to blame the bike, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
dang
The
bike,
bike, the trail, the tree.
right?
Yeah.
And part of the question was, in myself of like I was looking for everything that was doing right, but it was actually the thing I was doing wrong that
Hmm.
and having a good look at that
Yeah.
will set me up for next time on that corner.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah, I totally agree. And to bring it back to the diametric
Yeah.
feedback, too
Yeah.
often, right, in business and life and whatever, we do look for, but wait a minute, I was doing this and this and this right. Right?
Yeah.
It's the confirmation as opposed to, let's look at the opposite,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Where did I
Yeah.
miss this? Well, like
Yeah.
what went wrong in this moment?
Yeah, yeah, and I think you're right, Mike. Like the world that we live in, we hear statements like "find the rightness in what you're doing, make your decision right," and
Yes.
yes, and this is just moving from this space to this space, like just being
Yes.
curious of what else is
Yes.
possible there, and how can you inform
Yeah.
your decisions moving forward? Because when we get too comfortable in that big old lazy chair, same old, same old, same old. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's no longer working.
Yeah.
And we need to make major changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so as I said in the beginning, I spend a lot of
Mhm.
time playing in the agile space. A good
Yeah.
chunk of my time is there. So it's not just software. Like right now, I'm working with a company that does brain science. They do medical testing. And it's really quite
Yeah.
fascinating. Um, but in that space, feedback loops are so important. And one of the biggest challenges teams have and organizations have is they're looking at the things they're doing right. Right. I'm going to use a simple example. They set up a website, and what they start looking at is how many people visited. It's not
Yeah.
actually the important metric. It's how many engaged. Right.
Right.
Clicked on that button and gave you their credit card, or whatever the purpose of that site is. Right. Is they got to change your perspective from what's confirming to what's valuable, like what's the outcome we're looking for.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and I hear this often with high performing teams of we feel a little stagnant. We
Yes.
all get along really well, like
Uh-huh.
we have team cohesion, and yet we're stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you diversify perspectives,
Yes.
again, you're creating opportunities for creative expansion.
I agree.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden you can just create this echo chamber, this
Mm-hmm.
echo chamber. and we need to add some different flavors, right? And that might not feel good. It might not feel good.
Actually, there's a good chance it won't feel good. At
Probably.
times.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it can feel really, disorientating because we're looking for ways to affirm or confirm what we believe.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden we have something that is challenging what we believe or challenging our process or challenging the way we are, we can get triggered by that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Congratulations, you're human, right?
Yes, well done, well done. Yeah. So there is, in moving through and past the trigger, that's where we can find the possibility of the diametric feedback, of the
I agree.
feedback. Yeah.
All of this is making me think back to a conversation I had this morning with our mentor, Rick.
Mhm.
We're talking about something I'm putting together. And it's the statement he made is, where there is a safe and courageous space, there is creativity and strategy.
Mhm.
And then he goes on to say, what's your relationship with failure? Right? Because that's the thing. We look for stuff to help us confirm we're not failing. Where in fact, if we have a good relationship with failure, right, we can push through and get over to those places where we can hear the hard feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I guess my question though is, Mike, like if it's information and the hard feedback,
Yes.
I'm curious as to what makes it hard when it's just information. If it was, and so it ties into part of failure is the fear of, right?
Yes,
The fear of
I
not being
agree.
liked, the fear of, somebody being angry. So now we have to do some emotional labor on that. And I'm like, well, if it's just all information, and if we just lived in the world of like, oh, yeah, that's my flavor, or no, that's not my flavor. Like I
Yes.
make up when you go to an ice cream, place. Obviously, it's summer. I'm thinking of ice cream.
Yes.
You go to an ice cream parlor and there's 50 flavors. Do you think rum raisin cares that you haven't picked rum raisin?
Of course not.
Right? It's
But
like,
moose tracks might. No, I'm kidding.
right? Like we often take the opposing view,
Yes.
personally, because probably there's some identity trigger involved in there and somehow.
Yeah, an identity trigger, an ego trigger, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, I just want to pause just for a second because I notice we're being watched live. So whoever you are, say hi in the comments. And if you have a question or something to contribute, please put it in there too.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. We'd love to hear any questions or comments.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there when it comes to feedback. Like this idea of failure, and I've seen this over and over again in corporate environments, is when I talk about failure, they're like, what? That's like, we can't fail.
What?
Like, in the agile space, it's like, that's feedback information, right? We put this feature out. Let's assume it's software. We did this feature. It didn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, what are you going to do now? It's just information. You're not failures. Just that thing didn't work. And what if we can embrace it at that kind of level? Like, look at that diametric feedback from the perspective of, this is information, and confront it.
Yeah. Well, and I really, I do hold that the place, right, between the opposing perspective and the perspective we are holding in between, somewhere in here is going to be the sweet spot.
Yes.
So it may not be exactly going over like, oh, I agree, because and like double down, asterisks here. This is not about condoning any, like, or being like, oh yeah, now all of a sudden because I'm thinking about it, I believe in it too. It's just considering what is available in that perspective for you to use to get out of your comfort zone and get into the creative space and make the shifts and changes that bring some vitality and aliveness.
Yes.
Yeah.
What just came up for me was in this range, I'm loving this, Leanne.
I know, I know, I'm excited.
In this range, there's the one end of it, which might be described as apathy, perhaps. Right? Where we're confirming our biases and what we believe. At the other end of the range is no matter what anybody says, I'm going to blindly follow it.
Right.
Somewhere in the middle here is a place of curiosity and creativity, and right, so it comes on a range. Wow, blog post pending.
There we go. Yay.
Yeah, but somewhere in the middle here is where all that goodness that really helps us move forward comes from.
Right. Yeah, I love that, Mike. And this is not, again, this is about living in that space, and we don't have to wait for challenges to show up to be in this space. We don't have to be like, I take a stand against if it's not broken, don't fix it. It's like, no, you know what? If we continually challenge those perspectives, then we won't have to. Broken may not show up.
I would agree.
Yeah.
The point is never to get to broken. The point is let's always improve. Yeah. Let's always move it forward. I agree.
Yeah. Let's just do it better.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool.
So we're kind of coming towards the end of our time here.
Yeah.
So a question I always like to ask my guests is, what do you want people to take away from this?
Yeah. So, well, of course I have some action items, right?
Of course.
Yeah, of course. So the first thing I would challenge everyone to do is check out your social media and, just spend some time of like, how much is this affirming my beliefs? And then I challenge you to follow 2 accounts that trigger you to no end, that just like cause that tension, and just be curious with it. Be curious with it. Okay, so that's one thing. The next thing I would say to people is, when you find yourself in the duality of either or, be like, oh, okay, well, wait, move in, like find the opposing perspective, right? And then at least create one more choice, so you at least have 3.
Yes.
At least 3. Yeah. And the other thing I would say is speak to a coach. Get clear on what your triggers are, particularly your feedback triggers, and get clear on them, and then work or create a process for yourself to be able to create from those triggers. Those triggers, those are the nuggets.
Yes.
The nuggets. Yeah.
The nuggets, and they're the ones that, from a human nature point of view, we typically avoid.
Absolutely, we do.
It's what I love about having a coach, right?
Yeah.
To help me see that.
Yeah, for sure. So there's 3 things that I would ask everyone to do, and just give it a go and see what happens. I love those. And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. I love the social media one too, because too often, I'm going to speak from personal experience. It used to be I gravitated towards people and comments and things that affirmed what I believed. And if anybody argued with me, I'd withdraw from the conversation. I don't do that anymore. And there's so many nuggets to be had. It's not I'm arguing for the sake of arguing. It's feedback. It's information.
Yeah.
Right? A different point of view. Yeah.
Yeah,
love
absolutely. Those. Yeah. Cool.
So, Leanne, if people want to find you, they want to hear more, they want to talk to you, how can they find you?
Yeah, well, you can find me on LinkedIn.
That's one place right?
You can. Yep. Perfect. Thank you. Or you can check out my website. And on there, I do have a PDF about in regards to summiting goals, but perhaps that's another conversation we can talk about.
Oh, I would love that. I love that.
That's great.
Yeah. And in terms of LinkedIn, for anybody who doesn't know, If you look at the page that this live stream is on, you'll find a connection with Leanne there. So either search for her or just look down a bit. You'll probably find it.
Yeah. And I would love to hear what people's thoughts are, or, like, check in. Let me know how the switching up the social media feed is working for you.
I like that. I love that.
Yeah.
And so for everybody, if you weren't here live, if you're watching a recording, feel free to comment if you got a question or a thought or something to contribute. As all social media, Leanne and I will get notified that you've done that, and one of us or both of us will reply to it as well.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Leanne. This has been wonderful. And thank you for everybody who's either watched it live or is going to be watching it in the recording. Coming up Monday, August 29th at 6 p.m., I'm talking to Manoj, and I'm not sure what the topic's going to be yet, which is one of the fun parts of this. But so look for the notification of that soon.
Yeah.
All right.
Great. Thank you. Leanne. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mike. Enjoy
Thank
your
you.
day.